Hello, this is the LEGO Monkie Kid, Monkie King Warrior Mech set. I have a suggestion for something to help you establish better context for everything that I'm going to show you and talk about here in this video. Grab a ruler or a tape measure and measure out vertically 13 inches or 33 centimeters approximately. That is the height of this mech at the head, not including these height enhancing tassels up here. So right there, 13 inches, 33 centimeters, and consider the fact that this costs $150 in the US. Two important facts and figures that should help you with framing everything that I talk about and show you in this entire video. The set includes 6 minifigures, 3 side builds that are terrain or structures, and then also this miniature mech for bad guys, and a small cloud for the Monkie King to float in on. I'm not going to string you along though. Let's get straight to the main thing that you're here to see. The mech has almost 120 drum lacquered, or fancy way of saying painted, gold pieces. It's the largest number of that type of coated piece that LEGO has ever included in any set. There are relatively just a handful of the traditional molded gold pieces, and that makes this a little bit extra special with its appearance because, in my personal opinion, that drum lacquered gold color or painted gold color that LEGO does is excellent. It's not 100% shiny, it's not chrome-like, but it's a very good hue and makes for some very premium looking parts. This also has its own exclusive cape piece as you saw on the back, and it has all these vinyl parts which are gold backed. They shine very nice and they have a good level of detail, and they're not too difficult to apply, unlike stickers, of which there are a fair many here. In universe, this is definitely a mech. It is not an enlarged version of the Monkie King himself. It is a physical, mechanical thing that somebody sits inside of to operate it. As a LEGO build, well, it's very proper. It is made of a bunch of small to medium-sized pieces with almost no large pieces. So you really do get to assemble absolutely everything here with small details, a lot of studs on the side construction, some upside down construction. They use some of the classic character and creature building system sized large ball joints to connect some things. They use clips in some places. There are large ratcheted joints. I'll show you how the articulation works for this. There are some Mixels style, smaller, medium small sized ball joints for some parts. And overall, I mean, it's a proper building experience, and it's an advanced building experience. I will tell you that it is exciting to get to steps that have a lot of those painted or drum lacquered gold pieces, not because LEGO makes a big deal about it, but because it's just a really good looking thing. And when you put a bunch of those parts together, it just feels fancy. Let me try to demonstrate the articulation that's possible with this model, and unfortunately having the staff in its hands really limits it. They have these ball joints that they use for attaching this that in theory should give it the maximum amount of reasonable posability, but it just doesn't work out that well with these ball and socket pieces the way that they're arranged. So I'm just going to take this off for now because it's just much better to do so, and I can actually show you how this thing works. So the head is able to turn from side to side. It also has a little bit of up and down motion or movement, and that's on a ratcheted joint. So you have 3 clicks available there. The hands are able to rotate, so it has working wrists to rotate around. Each finger can articulate in and out. These also have anti-studs on them. The thumb is able to rotate around in various different ways because it's on a ball joint. Then you also have elbows, and the elbows do work properly. They've got just ball joints that are side by side. There's a little bit of limitation there. I can get you a little bit more extension, but I think it's a fair amount. Would have been nice to get a little bit more flexing out of that. At the shoulders, there are several things that you can do. First of all, out at this joint, at this level right here, you can bring this up, and I'm just moving some pieces out of the way so you can go up and down right in there. And it also has rotation, so I can bring these kind of in between parts back together to help take up some of that gap right there. But it has rotation, which is slowed down by a geared mechanism that just uses axle pin parts on either side to reduce the ability for this to move. So it's still able to move, but it has some extra friction on it, which is exactly what you want. Now you're not able to bring the arms down any farther than that, so they can go up, but they can't go down any farther than that. So that's just the limit there. So all that is definitely limited a fair amount, but the mechanisms look nice. They go together well. They just don't give you all that much posability. The legs are able to splay and come together. They don't splay out too much, but it's definitely important to have a little bit of extra stability from doing that. Reduces the total height just a bit, but works much better when they are splayed apart. Technically, this does not have working knees, although it does have the option of extending knees. I mean, there are joints in there. You can open this up. You can pull it apart. There are some Mixel style ball joints at the back. Let me see if I can do this safely. I just took one little piece off. Don't worry. I will. There we go. So that lets you see how that's actually built. One big ball joint here, which technically could just be loosened up and allowed to be used by itself. But then they have these additional Mixel style ball joints at the back that do get locked in. But if you want, for the sake of posing, I don't know if you're just going to be playing with it or trying to do some stop motions, you can just leave those back ones unlocked to have some virtual knee movement. Now it doesn't flex very much, but it does extend. And if that little bit of movement is valuable to you, it is an option there, and it's not too difficult to use that. However, once you get it locked back in by locking those two little Mixels ball joints into place, that's just going to keep everything so that, well, basically it'll stand up much more easily than if those are kept loose. Now the legs are able to extend forward quite a bit, and they're able to come back just somewhat, not as much as you would like. And then down at the ankles, you have just a tiny bit of movement. So they're ratcheted to go forward and back just like that. They're also able to lean side to side so that when you have the legs splayed apart, you can still get that nice flat contact with the ground with just a tiny little bit of tire that sticks out on the underside for the sake of friction. So this is not going to slide around too easily, and it's not going to want to accidentally do the splits when you don't want it to. So basically, as long as the feet are on the ground, then it's not going to be moving around. You can also rotate those feet in and out for what that's worth. I'll tell you, it's not worth all that much, but I guess it's more the thought that counts than anything. Ultimately, that right there is about the best that I can get out of this for a walking pose. So technically one leg is in front of the other, so it does have some sort of dynamic movement appearance to it. And move one arm forward and one arm back, maybe extend that out just a bit more. This arm will not go in any farther than that. So it's not a great look by any means, but it's something. Which is better than normal, but I don't want to give it too much credit because it is limited. Now, granted, this is rather heavy. It is rather tall, and it does have to be able to be made by kids. It needs to be able to be assembled by kids. So there are a lot of restrictions involved here. I'm just being realistic about, it being a walking thing, and generally people like to play with their walking things in walking forms or to pose them in walking forms. So it is limited in that way, but at least it does always want to stand up. It's difficult to get it into a pose where it's going to fall down and break pieces off or be frustrating for you. You also have the ability, I forgot to mention, to move these little tassels up and down. So those are on ball joints, so those can be moved around a bit. And the Monkie King Warrior Mech here has a tail. Even though it's a mech, still added a tail onto it. So bringing this out of the way, you can see that's just a bunch of ball joints. So that can be rotated around, curled around any kind of way that you want. It's not necessary to have this on the ground at all for the sake of balancing. And there's not much weight here. It's kind of awkward to me that this is a mech and it has a tail and it's so thin as it is, but there it is. It kind of is attached in a weird way. You don't want to see any of this below or beneath the cape here. Just leave the cape on and it's useful. Also, all of these vinyl pieces are pretty fancy. Again, they're shiny. They do they do their job, I'd say. Definitely a shame about the staff, though. I mean, this is large enough that a lot of kids would be able to actually wield it around. Fortunately, it does have some strength to it, but not too much. They do have the ability to shrink this down. You know, in universe, the story goes that it's able to, you know, shrink to tiny sizes and expand to huge sizes. So they let you do that, just removing the center section from it to make it smaller. That's that. The driver or operator's compartment of this mech is in the chest. So I went ahead and put the Monkie Kid figure in there, and you just open that up by bringing the entire chest assembly down. That's actually very extremely nicely apportioned and set up in there, but there are a whole bunch of stickers for consoles and things, most of which you're not able to see. You can see this one right here in front, and he has a couple of control sticks, one on either side, so that's all good. But there are all these controls in there that you just can't see that are on those cheese slope pieces, and that's too bad. You miss out on that once the thing is complete. See, look at that. With the figure removed, there's one thing on that side, there's another over there, and then up above, one there and one there. Now you can put a second figure in there, one facing towards the rear like this. It's rather cramped and awkward looking, but you know, the other figure can be facing towards us in the normal operator's position that I showed you before. However, that does restrict which figures you can put together, which figures can team up to work the mech based on their headgear or their hair pieces. If the hair or headgear pieces stick out too much to the rear, then they will interfere and the other one won't fit. So there are some limitations, but I think this is the general idea that they were going for, a two-person cockpit, just not well implemented. I also want to point out that there are a number of things on this model that can be accidentally knocked off, like if you're not careful opening or closing the compartment there, just because these are rather large pieces to be only attached with two studs. You get a lot of leverage on it. You can easily pop those off. You already saw me accidentally earlier pop off. And now this is misaligned. There we go. That goes in. I popped off one of these pieces, one of these spoiler or wing pieces down at the ankle. That's extremely easy to do because it's just in the way. Same thing can happen here if you're not careful with the middle one that's attached with just a single small, like minifig scaled robot or skeleton arm inside of there. And there are just a number of things that are attached in semi-precarious ways. Let me just get you some additional angles of this so you can see some other bits of its construction, because it really was interesting to put together with a lot of interesting part usage, a lot of unexpected types of connections that are made throughout. The eyes are indeed printed. We'll see one of those individual printed pieces up close a little bit later on, but again, with the drum lacquer pieces, those are nice. I don't think we got to see around the backs of the arms all that well. These are actually tied together pretty well, except for some of the smaller bits, like these little tassels can be knocked off fairly easily. There you can see the ball joints behind there. Nice inclusions of a bunch of these teal colored heart pieces all throughout. The arms are built all the way around and fairly equally detailed no matter what angle you look at them from. Even the lower legs are made with some level of care around the back. So you do see some undersides of parts, but they have some inverted tiles that are used in good places, some additional stickers used. So they did put care into this from many angles. This small building build is actually really, really nice. It is small. I mean, it's on an 8x8 base, but most of the building itself is 8x6. And the stickers on this are really important, I think. They add a lot to the display value of this and just the immersiveness of it. This is a little franchise outlet for Pigsy. So this is where people can go up and order some food to go. He's got his menu up there. Got the signage up above, an AC unit as well, just a small one outside. And there's even just a little bit of detail on the inside of this, not too much, because they didn't want to allow minifigures to go inside. But there's a stove and oven back there, and there's a sticker inside to show that it's all greasy and everything. They even have a venting hood above it and a fire extinguisher over here in case everything goes wrong in the rush of morning or midday orders or something. And then this is an apartment up here. I'm assuming that this is the Monkie Kid's apartment, judging by a couple of the pictures depicted on stickers in here. Again, just a very small thing, but a nice space. This even has an action feature built into it. So if the Monkie Kid either needs to break out or gets broken into from above, maybe by a bad guy mech of some sort, then a wall gets popped out. There's some fish getting dried up here, so that's probably going to be pretty stinky. There will probably be some jokes made about that, and probably some nearby neighbors will not be too happy about it. And up top, for the very freshest vegetables, I've got a small vegetable garden that's growing with a planter here, and I even like the sign. You know, it's just a billboard, but so many cities have billboards, so this totally makes sense, and it looks cool. Here's how that looks around the back. Here's another side build. It's just an electrical pole, so got a couple transformers up there. We call them telephone poles in the States usually. Got a sign on the side for Pigsy that's lit up on the side for his business. And this is an arcade machine that's built down here. It's a very similar build to one that I've seen Lego use before. It just has brand new stickers for it. It does have a sticker on the other side of the cabinet as well. The little tan thing with the printed clear tile on top, I'm being told by viewers, is supposed to represent a takeout box. I thought it was just a menu, but it's also from Pigsy, so if you've not seen that before, there's the front of it. I don't read the language. Feel free to include a translation in a comment down below if you want, and let me know whether you think that's more of a menu or a takeout box. And then finally over here, this is what's called Flower Fruit Mountain. I don't know if this is intended to be a tiny version of something that would actually be a mountain in the show, in universe, or if Flower Fruit Mountain is actually just a tiny thing and there's like a legend of it, and you go there and it turns out it's actually just really small. And then it has the flower fruit on it, which is showing the heart-shaped peaches. So one there, and around the back there's another one that you can pick from the thing. Where is it? There it is. Here's a Demon Bull clone mini mech, and pretty much what you see here is what you get. It has a stud shooter on one side, which is hooked up to a stud, and a 1x1 cylinder piece, which makes for a more interesting projectile. Additional projectiles are included in the shoulders. You can see those as rocket launchers. If you want those, just break those entire sub-assemblies off. They are inside of pieces that were originally used as Metal Beard's beard. You'll see that same piece used throughout a number of sets in this series. This could be a weapon, or it could just be a basic shield, or a shield and a weapon because it has a spike on the end of it. This thing looks like it's super articulated. It's not. You know, it has Mixel style ball joints, but the upper legs are very bulky, which limits just the total of what you can do with this. But it's way more posable than the big mech, ironically, but not a particularly uncommon situation. Got the banner back here, has a single bull horn on it as well. And just to finish the look at this, around the back, there's not much to see. The Monkey King proper, not the Monkey Kid, but the Monkey King, has a cloud to move around on, and that's its own separate little build with a little clear stand to go with it. And it looks appropriate. You know, it's scaled well to the figure. Yeah, it wobbles around because it's only attached with the smallest piece, but I mean, it does what it's supposed to do. It's elevated well above the ground, and it looks like it's in motion, and it looks like a cloud. Here's the new Monkey King figure, which is mostly new compared to the collectible minifigure series version. The hair piece is the same, the tassel piece up top is the same, and I believe the cape piece is the same, but torso's new, head's new, legs are new, and the staff is now made with the new piece, the new hilt piece that's longer at the ends with the drum lacquered finish. Around the back, you can see some additional detail for the torso, which is printed up really nicely. The legs are dual molded as well, so this is really good, and he has an alternate face. So this one makes sense, but it might not be the most common expression that you think of when you think of the Monkey King. This is a little bit better, you know, funny, wacky, having fun. Here's just a reminder of how different the figures are between the two versions, and this also makes it very clear that you're seeing different stages of the Monkey King here. Like, even if this was intended to be the same exact character, They are just at different parts of the story. So the one on the right has his restraining band around his forehead there. It's just at a completely different time. Here's this set's version of the Monkie Kid with some face paint on there to make him look a little bit more monkey-ish, but still fully human, obviously. Or at least mostly human. I don't know if he has any monkey in him whatsoever. I think he's just human who has taken on the spiritual mantle from the Monkey King, but we'll see how that ends up working in the show. And he does have an alternate face as well that does not have that paint on it. These are both Demon Bull clones, but the one on the right is named Growl, and the one on the left is Special. It's General Ironclad, so a clone yet at a higher rank, and that gives him the right to have some special stuff. So he's got the gray colored horns, and he also has the shoulder armor and a little bit of cloth, not necessarily a full-on cape, but like a half a cape. And also his arm color is different, so that makes it a somewhat unique figure, even though the torso is the same and the headpiece is the same, and underneath you have no expression for the head, no print on there, it's just plain. I personally don't yet know who these characters are or what they're going to be doing, but they do have names. On the left is An, and on the right is Jia. And it's striking to me that we have here a male character and a female character with identical facial expressions. Yet they're not just basic smiles. That's not something that you see very frequently, and I feel like that's just valuable. It's nice to get those expressions in both forms and in one set at that. So I'm happy about that as just a fan of stuff that can be used for customizing figures and characters at any time in the future. Here are all the spare or leftover parts, including the printed eyepiece for the main mech and an extra projectile for the mini mech. And finally, here's the spent sticker sheet, so you can see I wasn't kidding when I said there are a lot of stickers in this set. Fortunately for my wife and I am not a hoarder, but unfortunately for you, that means that I don't have all the Lego things. I don't have a bunch of mechs to compare this to, so I don't have much to show you for a size comparison. But again, it's 33 centimeters tall, or about 13 inches, so just take out a tape measure or a ruler and put it next to whatever thing that you already own that you would like to compare the size of this to. And you see clearly what it looks like here. That will put things in context for you in person. The price of this, again, $150 US. Let me see if I can get the box around closer to you. That's not working out that well. At least you can see a lot of it there. Kind of. Yeah, $150 US. 1,629 pieces. Price to part ratio looks very good, considering especially the fact that this has all those sweet, sweet drum lacquered gold pieces on it. Get out of my hand box. Also, this has the wonderful cape back here, which I didn't make a big deal about, but it's a nice flowy material, even though it came folded up in a bag, inside of another bag in this big box. Like it's nice and it looks ironed, and I didn't do that to it, so it's good material, good heavy stuff. The vinyl pieces here are super nice. All those pieces are worth more than your average normal piece. When you look at a price to part ratio, you have to consider what parts are actually in the set, what size are they, and what type are they. So all these things, I think, add to the value of this. And yes, it is really big. I personally am most let down by the lack of articulation and the lack of durability of this build. Given how much goes into it, it ends up being something that you don't want to play with too much. I think you don't want to pose around too much. Like, you want to set it on display and kind of bring it onto a scene, but you're not going to be active with it. It's almost it's more statue-like, in my opinion. I don't want to go all the way saying it's essentially a statue. Like, it's not useful for anything. It obviously has some posability, and it's designed and intended to be played with. But I feel like it doesn't play all that well because of its limitations on movement, and because it has little things that can be messed with, popped off accidentally, or put into strange states that are a little bit awkward to put back into better states, So ultimately, I feel like this is mostly a statement piece more than anything. I think that this is great. This is just great. I'd love to see Lego make just an entire series of sets like this, like even to this exact scale. It's so charming. You just imagine having a bunch of these lining a street. Like an entire series literally could be made of things like this. They would just fit next to each other. And yeah, I didn't make a big deal about the fact that it has Technic bricks with the holes on the side, and then this has Technic pins sticking out the side. A lot of people make a big deal about that. Like, that adds so much value, but ultimately, if it didn't have those, you could still put these two side by side. You know, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's a nice add-on that they include that there. This mech is a disappointment to me, even though it's a little thing. Oftentimes, Lego's little mechs are really nice and very playable, very usable. This one is playable, just not as much as usual, mostly because those upper legs are limiting the movement of the whole thing. The selection of figures is nice. And I very much like the Monkey King's little cloud there. That's done very nicely. And to have a stand, I always love clear stands to hold figures up or hold anything up. So those are nice pieces. It's interesting that the dish piece down at the base is one of the old ones, old polycarbonate ones that they're not making anymore. So that's an old batch, I'm assuming. Even this little build over here is decent. Not the best, but it's decent. And I like this. I like the little tree. Like, it's a handful of pieces, but it's charming. And the little printed fruit pieces are nice as well. So there's a lot good here. It's just not as good as I thought it was going to be. Is it worth $150 US? I think you have to decide that for yourself. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter what some random person on the internet is saying. If you want this, you're going to get it. And if you get it, I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to just like the build process and be happy when it's done, you know, and it's just going to be like, bam, it's there. Oh yeah. Probably the number one disappointment for this, for me, is that you can't hold the staff, the large golden staff for it, in different ways. You need to do some customizations to make that work. And they don't make it that easy for you to just customize in, let's say, to put one of these ball joint or ball socket pieces in the middle or something, so you can just hold it on, you know, hold it in one hand like that. Because ultimately all this here, all this inside is one long axle, the longest of Technic axles that the company makes. So yeah, there are a number of things that just aren't quite there. I almost feel like this didn't go through the same internal review processes as most sets usually do. I almost feel like it was done more by the core designers, and then the review process, the internal review process, was very short for this, so there weren't a lot of adjustments made after the initial main design. But yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully this was useful to you. If you're watching this review quickly after it came out, then you may not be able to get access just yet to the pure build for this, the full real-time build, but it will be out soon. We're just waiting for YouTube to do its thing to get it ready for you to see on replay. I did all of that live, and also the speed build will be coming out. So if you don't have the hours to watch this, or don't care to just hear the pieces being put together for hours in the background, and you can just see the whole thing in a single sitting via the speed build. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to your comments, your thoughts about this set here, and I'll talk to you again soon.